Roger Wattenhofer, Don Song, and Arthur Gervais. DeFi is an ecosystem of financial products and services built on top of permissionless blockchains, such as Ethereum. DeFi has attracted a surge in popularity since the beginning of 2020. The peak total value lock for DeFi surpasses $253 billion in December 2021, with Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain sharing the majority of DeFi's activities. Despite the fact that DeFi is growing at very fast speed, it also attracts the attention of malicious actors. More and more DeFi incidents happen in recent years. While there are some academic research on the real-world DeFi incidents, they have not yet been studied systematically. To systematically study the DeFi incidents, we first construct a DeFi reference frame, and then we build a DeFi incident dataset. To our knowledge, there are at least 181 DeFi incidents from April 2018 to April 2022, resulting in a total loss of over $3 billion. So here comes the first research question. How can we systematically measure DeFi incidents? In order to answer this question, we conduct the statistical analysis to study the collected DeFi incidents, including the protocol type analysis, structural equation modeling, emergency pause analysis, and the audit effectiveness analysis. The second research question is that how can we learn from the past DeFi incidents to strengthen the DeFi security? In order to answer this question, we conduct the incident defense and tracing. We show how to detect the adversary contracts, how to trace the source of funds, and how to front-run the adversary during the rescue timeframe. Now let's take a look at the DeFi reference frame. Our system model consists of 5 layers, including the network layer, the consensus layer, the smart contract layer, DeFi protocol layer, and the auxiliary service layer. DeFi protocols are built on smart contract-enabled blockchains, where the auxiliary services ensure the overall efficiency and stability of the ecosystem. The network layer enables the data transmission between and among system layers. Our threat model captures adversary goals, knowledge, and capabilities. The adversary may aim to maximize the monetary or non-monetary utilities, and the adversary may have public, sequencer, or insider knowledge. We also summarize 15 types of adversary capabilities across 5 system layers. For example, the adversary is able to borrow, use, and return funds from a liquidity pool using a single atomic transaction with flash loan. Now let's move on to our data. We sample a dataset of work under investigation, including the DeFi incidents, academic papers, and audit reports. Our dataset consists of 181 DeFi incidents over a period of 4 years, from April 2018 to April 2022. These incidents are gathered from 3 sources, including the Rack News, Slowmist, and CryptoSec. We also identify relevant academic papers from 8 of the top security conferences. In total, our dataset captures 78 academic papers. We also collect 13 most recent audit reports from 6 security audit companies. We then provide a taxonomy of DeFi incident types. Our taxonomy covers 16 core incident types and 27 incident causes across 5 system layers. For example, we identify 7 incident causes and 19 incident types on the DeFi protocol layer. We manually label the incident types that each academic paper and audit report addresses. As you can see from this table, academic works covers more incidents than the industry audit report. We also noticed that some audit companies, such as PackShield, enable the automatic detection of some types of incident causes. We observed that most of the academic papers and audit reports focus on the incident types that are related to smart contract layer vulnerabilities. While there are some academic papers focusing on the network and consensus layer incident types, none of the audit reports explicitly address the potential network and consensus layer incidents. Although the academic work and audit reports cover some of the protocol layer incident types, such as front and back running, most of the protocol layer incident types have not been studied systematically. We find that the on-chain oracle manipulation is the most common protocol layer incident type, and we identify 28 such attacks on Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain. The on-chain oracle manipulation is actually a type of composability attack. Repeated on-chain oracle manipulation indicates the need for building tools to automatically identify such attacks. To our knowledge, only DeFi Ranger and DeFi Poser can detect the oracle manipulation vulnerabilities. DeFi Ranger can only identify the observed attack transactions, whereas the DeFi Poser can identify new vulnerabilities in the real time, but requires very complex modeling of the captured DeFi protocols. Therefore, we want to highlight the needs for building tools to effectively detect the oracle manipulation attacks in the real time. We further summarize the distribution of work under investigation into this table, which allows us to derive two insights. First, we find that the network and consensus layer incidents are understudied. While related work have surprisingly identified the evidence of minor misbehavior in the block header timestamp, we notice that it is not trivial to identify the NAC and consensus layer incidents with absolute certainty. For example, it is not easy to detect the selfish mining and the block reorganization attack. And to our knowledge, no publicly available tool can comprehensively detect the network and consensus layer incidents in DeFi. Second, we find that there is a very low coverage for the protocol layer incidents. Our dataset indicates that most defense tools still focus on the smart contract layer vulnerabilities. The literature, however, suggests that the development of effective protocol layer incident defense tools still remain an open research challenge. This is mainly due to DeFi's composability nature, which leads to an action path explosion in detecting the protocol layer vulnerabilities. Next, we conduct the statistical analysis based on our dataset. This figure shows the monthly number of DeFi incidents and the total loss for Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain in comparison to the total value logged. According to our data, the incident frequency and monthly loss increase as the total value log increases. We find that the majority of the DeFi incidents occur after late 2020, with a peak value in August 2021, where nearly $600 million are lost in a single month. Despite the fact that Binance Smart Chain is a relatively new blockchain, it experienced 69 DeFi incidents, where 29 of these incidents are exploiting the protocol layer design flaws. In particular, we observed recurring exploits on a group of forked BSC protocols from the 19th of May to the 3rd of June in 2021. The time frame of 15 days suggests that the attackers do not yet have automated tools to scan and reproduce similar incidents. This table groups the incidents that we collected based on the application types. We find that yield farming protocols and the cross-chain bridges incur 44% of the monetary loss, although they only capture 30% of the total TVL. In contrast, the DEX protocols have the highest TVL of 14%, but only incur 12% of the monetary loss. DeFi protocols may support emergency pause mechanisms. We find that 87 out of 181 protocols have the emergency pause mechanisms. We further examine the speed at which the DeFi protocols initiate an emergency pause. However, we find that only 7 out of 87 protocols initiate emergency pause within the first 24 hours of the incident, and only 1 protocol pauses within the first hour of the incident. Our data suggests that DeFi protocols may not yet have just-in-time intrusion detection mechanisms to identify abnormal protocol states or malicious transactions, which limits the effectiveness of the emergency pause mechanism. We apply the structural equation modeling to test and measure the causal relationship between variables in the DeFi incident system. SCM refers to a collection of techniques to examine the latent variables that are assumed to exist but cannot be directly observed. SCM consists of 2 submodels: a measurement model that tests the relationship between a given latent variable and its corresponding observed variables, and a structural model that performs latent structural regression to infer the causal relationship between different latent variables. We construct 4 latent variables and 7 observed variables as shown in this table. Specifically, we have preventive defense, asset exposure, reactive defense, and harm as the latent variables. We construct 7 observed variables, including the protocol's audit status, the protocol's emergency pause status, the total value logged in US dollars, the duration between the incident occurrence and the emergency pause, the incident disclosure status, the cumulative abnormal return, and the total monetary loss in US dollars. We then apply SCM to test their causal relationship. This figure shows the SCM result. Our results suggest that the latent variable harm increases with the asset exposure, which conforms with the previous security research result. We also find that the harm decreases if the latent variable reactive defenses increases. To our surprise, the high p-value of preventive defense indicates that our model does not find very strong evidence to suggest preventive defense reduces harm. Finally, we will talk about incident defenses. We analyze the usage of fast services in DeFi incidents. We find that 18 out of 181 incidents are executed using Flashbot's API on Ethereum, and 6 out of these 18 incidents appear to be accelerated by arbitrage traders. This figure illustrates the rescue and the incident time frame. The adversary can initiate an attack in 2 ways. First, the adversary can deploy a smart contract before attack and then cause a smart contract to initiate attack. But ideally, the adversary can also batch the contract deployment and the attack initiation into a single transaction, such that there would be no rescue time frame. However, we find that 56% of the adversary do not batch the contract deployment and the attack initiation, which means that anyone can inspect the deployed smart contract code and monitor the transitions, and then front-run the adversary during the rescue time frame. We perform bytecode similarity analysis on our incident dataset. Specifically, we compute the hypervectors of 5-gram Ethereum opcodes for each contract and group them by computing the Jaka similarity. This table presents the bytecode similarity analysis result. We identify 7 clusters of the exact match vulnerable contracts, where the contract within the same clusters have a pairwise similarity score of 100%. Therefore, we infer that at least 31 vulnerable contracts could be detected prior to the incidents by comparing with the known vulnerable contract in the clusters. Similarly, we infer that 23 adversary contracts could be detected. Using a similarity score threshold of 18%, we are able to group the vulnerable and the adversary contracts into 26 and 23 clusters, respectively. We find that for the vulnerable contracts, the contract in the same cluster are part of the DeFi protocols with similar functionalities. Additionally, the exploitation of identical contracts is nearly equal. The most notable outcome of our similarity analysis result is that we identify clusters of adversary smart contracts that target distinct DeFi protocols with similar vulnerabilities. Therefore, we could potentially identify adversary smart contracts in the real time by applying a more sophisticated similarity detection technique that could work on a more fine-grained level, such as the function level. Combining this with other program analysis techniques could potentially prevent such attacks. We conduct money tracing to analyze the adversary's source of funds. We start from the adversary address and then iteratively determine the addresses that provides the initial source of funds. We discovered that the majority of the attackers interact with the auxiliary services, such as the centralized exchanges and mining pools. We highlight that the adversary identity may still be revealed because this auxiliary service may provide the stored personal identifiable information upon regulation requests. We observed that 73 adversaries source their funds directly from mixers, which conforms with the intention of the most recent US section on Tornado Cash to prevent the money laundering using mixer services. We summarize the main findings of this paper. We find that the network and consensus layer incidents are understudied, and there is a very low coverage for protocol layer incidents. We observe repeated on-chain oracle manipulations. We detect the absence of intrusion detection tools to automatically trigger the emergency pause. We discover that adversaries can be front-run during the rescue time frame. We find that adversary and the vulnerable contract are detectable. We discover that the adversary identity may still be revealed. We therefore conclude that potential defense tools, such as the real-time intrusion detection tools, are required for strengthening the DeFi security. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for the great talk. Are there any questions from the audience? If not, I actually have a question. So you have mentioned that consensus attacks that involve the consensus layer are a bit understudied. So it's kind of intuitive to see that a safety attack would be very damaging towards DeFi because of potentials for double spending, etc. But do you have any intuition how liveness attacks can be damaging in terms of the health of these contracts? By liveness, I mean like the chain might be halting, some transactions might be censored, and so on.
Yes, we just find the gap that there might be potential consensus layer attacks on DeFi, but there's actually, in reality, there's no DeFi incidents related to this kind of incident causes. So we conclude that there might be a gap between the real-world DeFi attacks and how this attack can be detected. We just does not have the right tool at the moment to detect the consensus layer attack. Yeah.
I see. So there might be a consensus layer component which we might not be aware of in many cases.
Yeah, such as a block reorganization attack. Yeah.
Yeah. Please find the speakers after the talks, and then if you have further questions, let's thank the speaker again. And our next and the final talk is an empirical study of DeFi liquidations, incentives, risks, and instabilities. And our speaker is Jens Ernstberger. He's a PhD student at Technical University of Munich, supervised by Professor Sebastian Steinhorst and Professor Arthur Gervais from the Imperial College. And he is currently also a visiting researcher at the Center for Responsible Decentralized Intelligence.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shihan, for the wonderful presentation. And today I'm going to talk about incentive risks and instabilities in DeFi liquidation protocols. The work I'm presenting today is a work by Kahua, Lee, Pablo, Philip, and Arthur. And unfortunately, Arthur couldn't be here today due to unforeseen circumstances, which is why I'm giving the talk today. So this paper is published at IMC 2021, so feel free to look it up, and you can find it on Google Scholar.